Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover that every single person on Earth, every man, woman, and child, had been trapped inside a dream. Not killed, not enslaved. Just erased from reality. Their bodies wrapped in white cocoons hanging from a colossal tree. Their minds locked inside a perfect fantasy they'd never escape. No more war, no more pain, no more choice. Now imagine that this wasn't a nightmare someone dreamed up in a lab or a supervillain's passing thought. Imagine that this plan had been in motion for decades, quietly engineered by a man who watched the world tear itself apart and decided the only cure for human suffering was to steal human consciousness itself. This is not a hypothetical. This is exactly what happened in the Naruto universe during the Fourth Great Ninja War, the single most catastrophic conflict in the history of the Hidden Villages. Over 4 days, just 4 days, more than 80,000 ninja from every major nation fought side by side for the very first time in history. They faced an army of the resurrected dead. They faced a man who could level mountains with his bare hands. They faced a god. And at the center of all of it stood one knucklehead ninja from the Hidden Leaf who, not long ago, couldn't pass a basic graduation exam. So today we are telling the complete story of the Fourth Great Ninja War, how it started, why it could only end one way, and why, more than 2 decades after its release, this arc still stands as one of the greatest saga closers in all of anime. Strap in, this is going to be a long one. Chapter 1: The Wound That Started It All. To understand the Fourth Great Ninja War, you have to understand something that most people get wrong about it. This war didn't begin on a battlefield. It began with a boy watching the girl he loved die, and deciding in that single, shattering moment that the world did not deserve to exist. That boy was Obito Uchiha, a leaf ninja, a member of Team Minato, a kid who was so earnest, so full of idealism, that his teammates used to tease him for always being late because he stopped to help people along the way. He wanted to become Hokage. He believed in the will of fire, the way some people believe in a religion. And then, on a mission during the Third Great Ninja War, Obito was crushed under a boulder while saving his friend, Kakashi. He was supposed to die that day. Instead, he was saved by the legendary Madara Uchiha, who by that point was ancient, near death, and operating out of a hidden cave. Madara reconstructed half of Obito's body using the living cells of Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage. He kept Obito alive. He gave him a new arm, new strength, a new purpose. And then he waited for the right moment to break him. That moment came when Obito, healed and ready to rejoin his team, arrived too late to save Rin Nohara, the girl he loved, who died on the end of Kakashi's Chidori. The circumstances were complicated, manipulated, heartbreaking. But in that moment, watching Rin fall, something in Obito simply shattered. The boy who believed in dreams didn't disappear, he just inverted. If the real world only brought suffering, then why not replace the real world? If reality was pain, then what was wrong with an eternal dream? This was the seed of the Moon's Eye Plan, Madara's grand design, inherited and adopted fully by Obito. Using the power of the Ten Tails, a primal godlike creature that predated the ninja world itself, they would cast the infinite Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu so powerful it could envelop the entire planet. Every living person placed in a dreamless sleep. A world without war, without grief, without Rin dying over and over again in the memory of a broken boy. This is the enemy the ninja world would have to fight. Not just a warlord, not just an army, a philosophy, a grief so enormous it wanted to consume the sun. Chapter 2: The Five Kage Summit and the Declaration of War. The chain of events that formally triggered the war began at the Five Kage Summit in the Land of Iron, a neutral meeting arranged to address a growing crisis. Akatsuki had been systematically capturing the tailed beasts, massive creatures of pure chakra, and their human hosts, the Jinchuriki. 7 of the 9 had already been captured. The balance of power that the ninja world had maintained for decades was collapsing. Something needed to be done. And then Sasuke Uchiha walked through the door. Fresh from learning the truth about his brother Itachi, that Itachi had slaughtered their entire clan under orders from Konoha, not out of ambition, but out of sacrifice. Sasuke had thrown away everything and allied himself with Tobi, the man behind the mask who claimed to be Madara Uchiha. Sasuke wanted the 5 Kage dead. He wanted the world that had used and discarded Itachi to answer for what it had done. The meeting turned into a battle. Sasuke fought. He nearly died. He fled. And in the chaos, Tobi, Obito operating behind the identity of Madara, made his move. He addressed the 5 leaders of the most powerful nations on Earth with a calm that was almost insulting. He told them he had captured the 8 Tails and 7 Tails Jinchuriki. He told them the 9 Tails was next, and that 9 Tails lived inside Naruto Uzumaki. And then he issued the ultimatum. "Hand over the 9 Tails Jinchuriki," he said, "or face war." The Kage refused. Not unanimously, not without fear, but they refused. And with that refusal, the 4th Great Ninja War was born. For the first time in the history of the 5 great nations, old enemies stood in the same room and chose to fight together rather than surrender to a power that would end all of them. The Allied shinobi forces were declared. 5 nations, 1 army, 1 purpose. It was either the bravest thing anyone had ever done or the most desperate. Chapter 3. The Allied shinobi forces and the secret they kept. What happened next was genuinely unprecedented. Nations that had spent generations at each other's throats, that had fought 2 world wars against each other, that harbored grudges stretching back to the age of the founding clans, put all of that aside and formed a single, unified military force. The Allied shinobi forces numbered over 80,000 ninja across 5 divisions. The 1st through 4th divisions, organized by fighting style, and the 5th division, a special support unit. The Raikage A took command. Gaara, the 5th Kazekage, former host of the One Tails, a man who had known only hatred for most of his life, was made the supreme commander of the joint forces. There's something poetic about that, if you let it sit for a moment. A boy who had once been the living embodiment of despair, who had killed without hesitation, who had carved love into his own forehead because no one else would give it to him, now stood at the head of humanity's last great hope. The Alliance agreed on one critical thing. Naruto Uzumaki and Killer Bee, the 8 Tails Jinchuriki, had to be kept away from the battlefield. They were the enemy's primary targets. If either of them was captured, it was over. So they were placed under guard on a remote island, a training facility disguised as a nature preserve. Hidden, protected. They told Naruto it was a mission. He didn't know there was a war. But you already know Naruto, and you already know how well that plan worked. Chapter 4. The Army of the Dead. If Obito was the war's architect, then Kabuto Yakushi was its weapon manufacturer. Kabuto, Orochimaru's former right hand and a master of medical ninjutsu, had spent years after his mentor's defeat perfecting a forbidden technique that Orochimaru himself had once wielded. Edo Tensei, the impure world reincarnation. The concept is grim and brilliant in equal measure. By sacrificing a living person and using their body as a vessel, a user of Edo Tensei can call back the soul of a deceased ninja from the afterlife and bind it to a regenerating body. The resurrected fighter retains all of their original abilities, every jutsu, every physical strength, but cannot be permanently killed. Damage heals almost instantly. They feel no pain. They cannot be incapacitated through normal means. Kabuto didn't just learn this technique, he mastered it. His army of the resurrected dead was terrifying in scope. He brought back legendary warriors that the ninja world had believed lost forever. Itachi Uchiha, the former Akatsuki prodigy. Nagato, the wielder of the Rinnegan. The previous Kage, including the first and second Hokages. 7 ninja swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. Dozens of former Akatsuki members. Hundreds of warriors across every major nation. And then, almost as if to prove a point, he revealed the ace he was holding back. The reanimated body of Madara Uchiha. Not the older, weakened version who had manipulated Obito. The prime version. The Madara of legend. The warrior who had once fought Hashirama Senju to a standstill, resurrected at the height of his power. Even Obito didn't know about this. Kabuto was playing his own game, collecting power, leveraging his army to force a position for himself in whatever world came after. The allied shinobi forces marched onto a battlefield where they would have to defeat enemies who literally could not die. But even that wasn't what would end them. What would almost end them was the one soldier the enemy had who was still very much alive. Chapter 5. The Opening Moves. The war opened on multiple fronts simultaneously, and the early battles were grueling precisely because of Kabuto's Edo Tensei forces. The 2nd Division encountered dozens of reanimated shinobi who could not be permanently stopped. Every time they destroyed a body, it regenerated. Every time they thought they had an advantage, another wave rose to replace it. The 3rd Division, led by Kakashi Hatake, faced some of the most emotionally devastating opponents Kabuto had prepared. Reanimated versions of people Kakashi had known, people who remembered their own lives and begged to be stopped, even as their bodies fought against their will. The horror wasn't just tactical, it was psychological. Meanwhile, something extraordinary happened with the reanimated Itachi Uchiha. Because Kabuto's control of the technique was imperfect in one specific way, when the resurrected person had sufficient will and emotional strength, they could briefly resist. And Itachi Uchiha, even in death, even bound by the technique, was exactly that kind of person. Itachi broke through Kabuto's control long enough to send word. He found Naruto during the chaos of battle. He warned him. He told him not to rely on others too much, not even on Itachi himself. And then, in one of the most incredible displays of individual skill in the entire war, Itachi and Sasuke, working together for the first time in years, the brothers finally on the same side, found Kabuto and forced him to release the Edo Tensei. In a cave, in the dark, using a genjutsu loop that trapped Kabuto in the Izanami, Itachi made the call that saved tens of thousands of lives. He shut down the army of the dead from the inside. The war was not over, but its most unbeatable weapon had just been neutralized. That left one problem. The 6 paths of pain, the reanimated Kage, the tailed beast weapons, and one man who didn't need Kabuto's help to be the most dangerous being on the battlefield. Chapter 6. Naruto breaks free. Naruto found out about the war the way you'd expect him to find out. Not because anyone told him, but because he could feel it. The Nine Tails chakra inside him had always made him sensitive to negative emotions, to killing intent, to hatred, to despair. And when the battlefield ignited with 80,000 people fighting for their lives, the wave of emotion was so immense that Naruto sensed it from an island hundreds of miles away. The moment he understood what was happening, that his friends, his village, his world were dying while he was being kept in a cage for his own safety, something shifted in Naruto that was quieter but more powerful than any transformation he'd ever undergone. He was done waiting. Naruto and Killer Bee broke free from their handlers and made for the battlefield. What followed? Naruto encountering his father's chakra inside the seal, completing his control over the Nine Tails power, entering his fully realized Kyuubi chakra mode, is one of the most iconic transformation sequences in anime history. The warm, golden light, the cloak of chakra that looked like the fox itself, the Rasengan spinning with a power that could crater mountains. By the time Naruto arrived at the front lines, the tide was already shifting. He distributed chakra to allied shinobi who were on the verge of collapse. He sensed every person on the battlefield. He moved with the speed and precision of something that wasn't quite human anymore. And he smiled while doing it. That ridiculous, unstoppable, infuriating smile. Because that's who Naruto is. He wasn't just stronger. He was himself, fully and completely, for the first time. The Allied forces, who had been fighting exhausted and hopeless for days, suddenly had a reason to believe. But belief was going to need to be very strong very soon, because something was happening on another part of the battlefield that would redefine the meaning of the word overwhelming. Chapter 7. Madara Uchiha. The Legend Walks. Let's be clear about something. When Kabuto reanimated Madara Uchiha, he didn't bring back a powerful ninja. He brought back a force of nature wearing a human face. Madara Uchiha was the co-founder of the Hidden Leaf Village. He was the only man in history to survive a direct battle with Hashirama Senju, the god of shinobi. He had awakened the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the highest evolution of the Uchiha bloodline. He had gone further still, transplanting Hashirama's cells into himself and awakening the Rinnegan, the legendary dojutsu that granted mastery over all 6 fundamental nature transformations. In life, he had been terrifying. In death, resurrected at the peak of his abilities, with a regenerating body that couldn't die and power that hadn't been dulled by age, he was something else entirely. Madara's entrance on the battlefield is one of those moments in anime storytelling that earns the word iconic. He didn't charge in recklessly. He didn't rage. He walked. He assessed the battlefield with the casual confidence of someone who already knew how the story ended. And then he summoned 2 enormous meteorites from the sky. Not 1, 2. Because when the first one was stopped by Gaara and Onoki, he sent the second one right behind it, knowing they wouldn't have the chakra to stop both. The crater that resulted was so large it reshaped the landscape. And Madara was barely warming up. Chapter 8. The 5 Kage versus Madara. The 5 most powerful individual ninja in the world, the Kage, the apex fighters of their respective nations, went after Madara together. And the result was the most lopsided battle in the history of the 4th Ninja World War. Madara fought all 5 Kage simultaneously. Not defensively, offensively. He summoned perfect Susanoo, the colossal armored warrior formed from spiritual energy, and used it like a weapon of mass destruction, sweeping through armies of thousands like they were fog. One by one, the Kage gave everything they had. Tsunade summoned Katsuyu and used her healing jutsu to keep them all functional as long as possible. A went straight at him with lightning release armor. The Raikage was so fast that he could dodge Amaterasu, the inextinguishable black flame. Onoki used dust release, a Keke Tota so rare that only 2 people in history had ever mastered it, a technique that could reduce any matter it touched to subatomic nothingness. None of it was enough. Madara absorbed damage. He healed. He countered. He used techniques that the Kage had never even seen before. Wood-style jutsu on a scale that Orochimaru would have studied with envy. Perfect Susanoo that towered over the mountain range like a god wearing armor. Tsunade, in one of her finest moments, remained standing even after Madara ran her through with a wood stake so large it should have killed her instantly. Her strength of 100 technique, a healing reserve she'd spent years accumulating, kept her alive long enough to spit blood at his feet and refuse to acknowledge defeat. Madara looked at her and smiled. Genuine appreciation. He called her the closest thing to Hashirama he had ever faced. And then Kabuto's release of the Edo Tensei kicked in. Itachi's sacrifice in that cave began to bear fruit. The reanimated Madara, tethered to the physical world only by the technique, began to feel the pull of release. Which was when Madara did something that nobody had planned for. He refused to go back. Using a technique he had prepared specifically for this scenario, Madara bit through his own heart and activated Rinne Tensei, the ability to resurrect himself as a fully living person. He broke free from the Edo Tensei. He came back to life. Not as a reanimation, as a living human being. With the Rinnegan, with the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, with the cells of Hashirama Senju still woven into his body. The nightmare was no longer a puppet. It had woken up. Chapter 9. The Ten Tails is revived. While Madara dismantled the Kage, Obito was executing the next phase of the plan. Using the sealed forms of the captured tailed beasts, all except the 8 and 9 tails, Obito performed the ritual to resurrect the Ten Tails, the primordial beast, the original chakra monster from before the ninja world existed. The creature so powerful that its very awakening was considered the precursor to the apocalypse. It rose from the earth like a geological event. It was enormous beyond scale, a single creature so large that the battlefield itself looked like a patch of dirt beneath it. It had no intelligence, only a primal, destructive hunger that defied comprehension. Its roar didn't just shake the ground, it shook the air. The Allied forces responded with everything they had. This was the moment the entire army converged. Every division, every special unit, every chakra reserve poured into stopping that thing. Naruto fought at the front of it. He was moving at speeds that made even the most experienced veterans struggle to track him. He was making strategic decisions in real time, distributing chakra to thousands of fighters simultaneously, holding the line with his body and his will while better tacticians figured out what to do. But the Ten Tails was something that chakra and tactics couldn't solve. And then Obito made it worse. He merged with it. The boy who had once dreamed of becoming Hokage, who had believed in the will of fire the way Naruto believed in it now, that boy pressed his body into the Ten Tails and became its Jinchuriki. He became a vessel for something that shouldn't have a vessel. A god in a broken body, controlling creation and destruction with thought. The war had just changed categories. Chapter 10. The Growth of Naruto and Sasuke. Here is where the story pivots from war narrative to something closer to myth. Because neither Naruto nor Sasuke had yet reached their true potential. And the story of how they got there is, in many ways, the whole point of everything that came before. When Obito became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki and began demonstrating power beyond anything the battlefield had seen, casually deflecting techniques that had leveled mountains, launching attacks that turned the sky black, Naruto and the Alliance were pushed to their absolute limits. And then something happened that no one expected. The Hokages who had been reanimated by Kabuto, including Minato Namikaze, Naruto's father, the fourth Hokage, were freed by the release of the Edo Tensei. Rather than fade into the afterlife, Minato chose to stay and fight alongside his son. Father and son, fighting together for the first and only time. Minato transferred a portion of Kurama's chakra to Naruto. The seal strengthened. The bond between Naruto and Kurama, which had been forged through pain and understanding over years of trauma and trust, reached its completion. Naruto didn't just use the Nine Tails anymore. He and Kurama worked together, as partners. And at the same time, on a different thread of the story, Sasuke Uchiha arrived at the battlefield. Having survived his own impossible journey, having spoken with the reanimated first Hokage, having processed everything he'd learned about Itachi, about the village, about what it means to be a shinobi, he arrived with his newly awakened Rinnegan. He arrived with a resolve that was different from everything that had come before. Not cold fury, not nihilism. Something cleaner. something that actually looked, for the first time, like purpose. When Naruto and Sasuke stood side by side on that battlefield, two boys who had been rivals and enemies and mirrors of each other since they were 12 years old, the air itself seemed to change. Two children of prophecy, finally in the right place at the right time. But the war still had one more gift of horror to offer before it would let them save anyone. Chapter 11. Guy Sensei and the 8 Gates. Might Guy is a man who cannot use genjutsu, who has mediocre aptitude for ninjutsu, who has no special bloodline, no legendary clan technique, no divine heritage. What he has is a philosophy that hard work, discipline, and the refusal to give up can match any genius. He has drilled that philosophy into his body so deeply that his body itself became the weapon. The 8 gates, specific points in the human body where chakra is regulated and restricted to prevent self-destruction, represent the absolute physical ceiling of human potential. Each gate, when opened, dramatically multiplies the body's power. The first 7 are dangerous but survivable. The 8th gate, the gate of death, removes all limiters entirely. Using it means burning every cell in your body for fuel. It means fighting at a level beyond what human tissue can contain. It means winning, if you're fast enough and strong enough, and then dying. When Madara returned to the battlefield as a living person, having already defeated the 5 Kage, having already absorbed the power he needed, when every other combatant was exhausted, wounded, or completely spent, Might Guy looked at his students and looked at his enemy and made a decision. He opened all 8 gates. What followed was not a fight, it was a hymn. Guy moved so fast that the friction of his movement through air caused the water on the ground to vaporize in his wake, forming massive dragon shapes of mist and vapor. He hit Madara, a man who had survived everything, who had considered himself essentially unkillable at this point, hard enough to make him bleed. Hard enough to make Madara say with genuine feeling that Guy was the greatest taijutsu user he had ever faced. For one impossible blazing moment, a man with no special powers was the strongest person in the world. Lee caught Guy before he hit the ground. His body was failing. The gate of death doesn't lie. Naruto's chakra, poured into Guy in the final seconds, kept him alive, barely. Modern medicine in the story later saved him, though he was left permanently disabled. But in that moment, in that single, burning moment when everything was falling apart and the world needed someone to simply refuse to quit, Might Guy didn't just fight. He became the reason why every person in that story does what they do. Chapter 12. The True Villain. Kaguya Otsutsuki. And now the war did something that anime rarely does this far into a saga. It revealed that everything, every plan, every conspiracy, every piece of the story you thought you understood, had been a lie within a lie within a lie. Madara Uchiha completed the infinite Tsukuyomi. He cast the genjutsu across the world, reaching the moon and reflecting its light down onto the surface of the planet, trapping every living person, every ninja, every farmer, every child, in the cocoons of the God Tree. He stood at the center of human history, triumphant. And then Black Zetsu stabbed him in the back. Black Zetsu, who everyone had believed was Madara's given physical form, his creation, his servant, revealed the truth with the kind of calm that only comes from someone who has been playing a longer game than anyone else in the room. He was not Madara's will. He was the will of Kaguya Otsutsuki. Kaguya was not a legend. She was not a myth. She was a being from another world, a celestial figure who, thousands of years before the story began, had come to Earth and consumed the chakra fruit of the divine God Tree. She was the first person on Earth to ever possess chakra. She was the mother of the Sage of 6 Paths. She predated the entire ninja world. And through Black Zetsu, she had been secretly manipulating every event in the Naruto story for centuries, engineering the Uchiha clan, engineering Madara's ambitions, engineering the infinite Tsukuyomi, all to accumulate enough chakra to resurrect herself. Madara, the man who had terrified gods, who had crushed the allied forces like they were insects, who had believed he was the architect of humanity's salvation, was just a stepping stone. Kaguya Otsutsuki emerged wearing his body and his power. She opened dimensions around herself like turning pages in a book. She wielded the Rinne Sharingan, the primordial eye that predated all others. She was calm the way extinction is calm. Total, impersonal, absolute. The war's final enemy was not a man with a broken heart. It was a god who had decided that human beings were a resource she was done sharing. Chapter 13, Team 7, The Final Battle. What saved the world? In the end, when all the grand strategies had failed, and all the armies were unconscious, and the fate of humanity literally rested on 4 people in a pocket dimension, was the thing that had always been at the heart of Naruto. Team 7. Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi. The students and their teacher. The family that had never called itself a family because it was too busy arguing and bleeding and growing up. Kaguya moved between dimensions. A vast desert, an endless ice field, a gravity-crushing red plain. Trying to isolate them, separate them, absorb their chakra before they could coordinate. She created true ash bone, a technique that could disintegrate anything it touched, even someone in Sage of Six Paths mode. Naruto fought, Sasuke fought. Sakura, in one of the most underrated moments of her arc, punched through the fabric of reality and delivered a blow that staggered a god. Kakashi, given a temporary gift of Obito's chakra and his friend's Mangekyo Sharingan one final time, moved with a precision and sadness that felt like a goodbye letter. The strategy was to touch Kaguya simultaneously from multiple angles, to force her into a position where she couldn't dodge both Naruto and Sasuke, and hit her with Chibaku Tensei, a sealing technique designed to trap her in a miniature moon. The execution was messy and desperate, and real in a way that the grandest battles of the war sometimes weren't. And in the middle of it, Obito, the boy who had broken and decided the world wasn't worth saving, came back. Not as an enemy, as himself. Sacrificing his remaining life force to restore Naruto's chakra when it mattered most. Looking at Naruto one last time, seeing in him what he had once seen in himself before everything went wrong. Choosing, in his final moment, to believe in the same dream he had abandoned. Kaguya was sealed. The infinite Tsukuyomi was broken. The god tree withered. The cocoons dissolved. 80,000 people opened their eyes in a ruined, exhausted, beautiful world. The fourth great ninja war was over. But the story wasn't. Chapter 14. The Final Battle Between Brothers. Because Sasuke wasn't finished. In the aftermath of Kaguya's sealing, with the world blinking awake and everyone trying to understand what had happened, Sasuke turned on the Kage. He declared his intention to create a revolution, to put the world under his control, to prevent another catastrophic failure of the shinobi system by simply removing everyone who could cause it. And Naruto, exhausted and wounded and barely standing, said, no. Not because he had some grand counter-argument, not because he could prove Sasuke wrong in the abstract, but because he knew Sasuke. He knew what this was. He had watched Sasuke bury every feeling he'd ever had under layer after layer of mission and purpose and ideology. And he knew that somewhere under all of it was still the kid who wanted to restore his clan, who had once been proud to be a leaf ninja, who had cried when his brother died, even though he'd spent years building up to wanting Itachi dead. They fought at the Valley of the End, the same place they had first fought as children, at a waterfall that had witnessed their rivalry from the beginning. No special abilities, no Nine Tails mode. Just two young men with no chakra left, throwing punches until they couldn't lift their arms. They both lost their dominant arms in the final exchange. They lay there, bleeding, looking at the sky. And Naruto told Sasuke that he had always considered him his closest friend. Sasuke conceded. Not dramatically, quietly. He asked Naruto to forgive him. Naruto said he already had. And that was the real end of the war. Not a seal, not a strategy, just two people choosing each other over everything else. Chapter 15. The Aftermath. The world that emerged from the Fourth Great Ninja War was not the same world that had entered it. The nations that had fought side by side, that had bled together, protected each other's children, watched each other die, could not simply return to the cold, suspicious isolation they had known before. The Allied shinobi forces didn't dissolve cleanly back into 5 separate armies. The experience of unity had changed people in ways that policy couldn't undo. Sasuke spent years afterward traveling, atoning, he called it, learning what he'd missed, seeing the world he had almost destroyed. Naruto eventually became the 7th Hokage, not because he'd achieved some rank or passed some test, but because he had spent his entire life becoming the kind of person the village needed to believe in. He did exactly what he had always said he would do, and he did it so quietly, so persistently, so completely himself, that by the time it happened, it felt inevitable. Kakashi served as 6th Hokage for years, holding the world together in the fragile post-war period with a reputation built on sacrifice and a face still hidden behind a mask. Gaara returned to the sand and remained one of the most respected leaders in the 5 nations, living proof that the thing inside you does not define you, that loneliness is not a sentence, that the worst beginning does not write the ending. The tailed beasts, freed from their Jinchuriki hosts in the final stages of the war, were released into the world as independent beings. After 1,000 years of being used as weapons, hunted, feared, sealed inside human children, they were simply free. Kurama chose to remain bonded to Naruto, because that's the kind of story this is. Not everything was fixed. The ninja world still had conflicts. The next generation would face their own impossible problems. The scars didn't disappear overnight. But the world that came out the other side of the Fourth Great Ninja War understood something it hadn't before. That the same hate which had started the war, the hate that had burned in a 12-year-old boy crushed under a rock watching a girl die, that hate had nearly ended everything. And the thing that stopped it wasn't the strongest jutsu or the most powerful dojutsu. It was the stubborn, relentless, almost absurd belief of one person that everyone deserved to be acknowledged. Conclusion. The Fourth Great Ninja War is not a perfect arc. It is sprawling, sometimes unfocused. Its power scaling breaks logic in places. It introduces villain after villain in a chain that some fans found exhausting. It runs long. It is the kind of story that demands you have been paying attention for hundreds of episodes before any of it lands the way it's supposed to. And yet, there is something in this arc that earns its place in anime history, something that goes beyond the scale of the battles, beyond the iconic transformations and the soundtrack swells, and the moments that live rent-free in the minds of a generation of fans. The Fourth Great Ninja War is, at its core, a story about what hatred costs. Every major conflict in the arc traces back to grief that was left unattended. Obito's grief for Rin, Madara's grief for a world that chose endless war over the peace he and Hashirama had built together. Even Kaguya's appearance, a being who had once given chakra to humanity as a gift and watched it become the instrument of endless violence, carries the weight of something that had been broken long before any of the characters we follow were born. And the answer the story gives, the answer Naruto keeps giving, in every fight, every conversation, every moment where he refuses to let someone suffer alone, is that you cannot cure grief with power. You cannot cure loneliness with domination. You cannot save the world by trapping it in a dream. The only way forward is through it, together. That's not a revolutionary message. Plenty of stories have said it. What Naruto does differently is commit to it. Naruto doesn't just talk about believing in people. He risks his life on it, over and over and over again. And the story rewards that belief in ways that feel earned, because we have watched him earn every inch of it. When Obito Uchiha chose, in his final moments, to save Naruto instead of letting him die, when a man who had built his entire identity around the world being irredeemable looked at one person and decided it wasn't true, that is the Fourth Great Ninja War's final argument. Not the sealing of Kaguya, not the reformation of the ninja system, not even Naruto becoming Hokage. That moment, that choice. One person changed their mind. One person decided the dream was worth fighting for after all. And that, more than the meteors, more than the 8 gates, more than any moon's eye plan, is what the war was actually about. If you've never watched Naruto Shippuden, go watch it. The slow parts and the long parts and the parts that frustrate you are all part of it. And if you have, if you were 12 years old when you first watched Naruto sit alone on that swing, and you're sitting here now thinking about everything this story did to you, then you already know what I'm talking about. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.